Hi everyone, Steve Carter here. Welcome to our latest episode of 2030, the podcast. This afternoon, this is a great opportunity for me and for all of you to get to know Linc Markham a little bit better. Linc is a name that's come up in my career over the last 10 years relatively frequently for no particular reason, just meeting people that I know that mention him. And so this is fantastic because I finally get an opportunity to hang out with him for the next 30 minutes or so. We spoke a few weeks ago through a mutual acquaintance, Ben Weston, a good friend of both of ours from BP, who put us back in touch. But as I said, our paths have crossed in different ways through different companies, and his name keeps popping up. So today I get the opportunity to have a chat to him, and when you look at his profile, you'll realise why I'm curious, and hopefully you will find it hugely beneficial as well. So, Linc, great to meet you, great to have you on, and look forward very much to talking to you for the next half an hour or so.
Thanks, Steve. Honored, and likewise, just from everything I've heard and know about you, it just seems like we're brothers on different sides of the ocean, I think, in the contingent workforce or workforce industry. So glad to be here.
Thank you very much. Yeah, look, maybe it's always good, usually start out asking a question about your story, and your story's been from engineer to technology to contingent workforce on a mega scale with BP. I'd love to know more about how, are you an accidental recruiter? How did you get started in this, and how did you end up where you're at?
Oh, it's a great question. I don't think it's accidental, but there is a thread. So let's try to connect the dots on that. So two themes I think have kind of followed me through my career, and I'm a lifelong intentional learner. I just love to soak in information and always curious about things, reading, listening, and that blended into all my jobs. And I kept volunteering for things, which is probably the second theme of my career, and being able to do that, it kind of led to the next thing, which led to the next thing, etc. So did start in a mechanical engineer in nuclear power plants, which was interesting, but a bit slow, to tell you the truth. It's very regulated and regimented. So I kept volunteering for IT work, and then got a degree in the evenings for IT and finance. So that led to volunteering for some bigger IT projects, which included a whole plant information system. And once I did that, I met people at Oracle. Oracle led to Ernst & Young. Kept volunteering some more for other industries outside of utilities, and that led to telecommunications and a role as an IT leader at Level 3 Communications, which interestingly enough started in 1998, and it was the world's largest startup at the time, with $14 billion of capital. It was laying the next generation of fiber optic cable and the next generation of communication. So that was cool, which then brought me to buying a lot of IT and IT sourcing. I wasn't in procurement, but I did kind of my own homegrown style, and then that got me landed a job at BP in IT sourcing, and then kept volunteering, and that led to contingent workforce. I saw a big, huge opportunity there.
Which is amazing, and I want to get into that a bit later. But this, the two things here about lifelong learning and this, and this volunteering, just sort of habitual volunteering, was that driven by curiosity and that learning, or was it driven by, look, you're one of those opportunities in front of me, I'm going to go for it?
Well, probably a little bit of both. It was probably a combination. I think the speed of IT, and I'm going to date myself back into the 90s. We had green screen still, and the start of servers and PC computing and all that at your desktop. We were way behind, so I kept talking to our IT department and saying, "Why aren't we here? Why aren't we here?" So it was a kind of we wanted to do these types of engineering packages, CAD, um, digitization. I mean, again, this was in the 90s, and some of the first stuff was coming out, and IT wouldn't support it. So I basically started a rogue IT group in engineering, which didn't get me too high marks, especially when I wanted to transfer into IT. But no, it actually did help, and I did end up moving into IT and leading that large plant information system project. But that's kind of how the volunteering and curiosity kind of melded together and got me into the IT side. And on the staffing world, just when you're in IT, you need a lot of people, and that's where a lot of programs are focused in IT. And I didn't quite care how we got them; we just needed them, especially early days Y2K and of the internet. We need more and more technology oriented people. So, contingent workforce was a great way to expand, and uh, great people were hard to find. So how are we going to do that in the best way possible? So that's what kind of led me from IT into sourcing, and then eventually into contingent workforce.
And how that transition, I kind of understand it, but for a lot of people, sourcing a product and then sourcing humans or a service, I guess, how how did you transition from one to the other? And like, was it easier, harder? Were you more passionate, less passionate? Just curious about how that morphed over, because subsequently you ended up in some massive jobs in the world of human capital.
Yeah, I guess if we zoom out a little bit from kind of IT hardware, software, etc., tools, and everything has to be well. I know things are changing a bit today with AI, but a lot of things have to be run and used by humans. So I guess I'm always been a very team oriented person, and when we were trying to grow rapidly, especially in my years at level three, from in a few years we went from 2,000 people to 6,000 people. Um, and the idea was to get the right people, and we were investigating, but we weren't offshoring, so we weren't looking at that time into those centers. So we were trying to get near shore and onshore type people. But if again zooming out, there's this kind of philosophy I guess I have about work. It's not really deep, but I think work has it's more than just a paycheck. I think there's belonging that goes with it. There's dignity. There's your kind of self worth. Not that your full self worth should come from your work identity, um, and ultimately livelihoods. I think it was at SIA. I heard a speaker, um, uh, I think it was Marshall. An executive coach anyway. He talked about livelihoods, and that resonated hugely with me. And the quote he had around it was, "We're all trying to build better tomorrows for our family," and dot 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 through our livelihoods. So to me, obviously work is something you can get done, you get your paycheck through, but ultimately it's building better tomorrows, both for companies, their shareholders and stakeholders, as well as individuals. So I think without getting too woo woo about it, I guess
Yeah.
it is people who you're caring about, and that to me is probably the bottom line, and why it's more interesting, even more interesting and more complex to buy, um, human capital or services than it is even hardware and software, etc.
Yeah, I mean, it is a complex thing. And actually, just to go back on the point about sort of how you feel about things, I mean, one of the things I learned probably too late in my career, I wish I'd kind of, when I started out, I was on that sort of road to the top, I was going to get there. And along the way, different things happened. I had a family, then started
Yep.
like my value set started getting shuffled, right? There were things that, it was a relentless pursuit of get there. And then it started being what secondary to family. And so it went. And actually, having had a time to sort of reflect on it, one of the things that's interesting for me I actually kind of, for some reason, never realised we're all just kind of passing through. Like at the end of the day, you leave a little bit of you behind, you leave a bit of your legacy, but actually you do a great job in the moment. But there's always a guy coming in behind you that's going to do another great job or attempt to do it their way. And
Right.
actually, people move on quick, and you know, I think there's jobs I've done I've been really proud of, and then I had a CEO once when I left quite a big job. He said, "Steve, we've loved working with you. You're a great guy. You've made a huge contribution, but we bury our dead very quickly." And 100% true. They moved on without me. And that was, when I look back now and I'm fine about it. I think
Right.
it's great, that companies do that. So, yeah, the whole people thing, the value set for me, like you, is I wanted to add value. Hopefully, I passed on some knowledge along the way, which I think is absolutely critical. So, yeah, it's not that woo woo, Link. It's like it really is what it's all about at the end. Hopefully, the world of AI doesn't disrupt the idea. I quite like being a human, so I really want to stay that way if possible. Um, and I do agree. I mean, contingent workforce particularly is a complex argument for people because for most people, the idea of permanent work is kind of their default. It's how you get a mortgage. It's the kind of value system around the dream, the American dream, the British dream, the Australian dream. To have a home and do all those things. But contingent workforce is different, and how do you see how's that shaped up over the years for you? Because when I started in recruitment, it was all about temp workers, and now it's a very strategic kind of thing. But have you seen a big transformation in contingent workforce over your years?
No, yeah. Yeah, this kind of parallels some of my journey at BP after uh, back around 2010, 2009, I guess it was doing some spend analytics on all of the indirect procurement group that I and some others helped to launch. And it was the contingent workforce was not one of the major categories. Um, in doing the spend analytics on billions of dollars that was being spent out there, started seeing 100 million here, 100 million there, and it all added up to about $1 billion if you put it together in contingent workforce spend. And this would be labeled as more, contract or temporary, not SOW, and not services. So it was like, wow, there's something here. And oh, by the way, we're not managing it too tightly. In one location, we might have 3 contracts with different business areas with the same vendor. So that kind of realization, but we've gone from, we went through probably 3, almost 4 generations of thinking, just get our arms around it. Second, put a business case, get it formalized and put it, kind of in an operational state with an MSP and VMS, and then drill down in analytics and optimize and improve performance. And then the fourth kind of generation, which I kicked off before I left, was around opening up. People call it multiple channels, or from gig workers, which takes a long time for a large company to get their arms around. Direct sourcing, which is bringing in some of those folks that are interested, that may have worked there in the past, alumni or past contractors or just interested parties. And then crowdsourcing as well. And the last one was around bots. I was looking to hire bots as part of the multi-channel approach. Everybody really liked the bot part. I was told we had, this was 3 or 4 years ago before I left, we had 600 or 700 bots running around, software bots. And I was like, well, how do we put them to work? If we're going to put them to work, let's not just use them over here in finance, let's use them over here in production and et cetera. So you really, over that 10-year period and going through those 3 or 4 generations of thinking, getting the basics down, and then kind of being able to kind of think bigger about who is in your non-employee workforce. And the other thing is we had autonomous vehicles, small submarines, etc. Right? Oil and gas, you're always exploring. doing maintenance, doing other things. Those, of course, were categorized more as equipment, but we were getting more into the robotic era as well, including drones, etc. So,
which is unbelievable. For like a lot of people listening to this podcast will come from the world of recruitment and staffing, where it's a very transactional, direct relationship. They have a vacancy, you fill a job. But you're talking about $1 billion of spend on workforce, not all of it human, in a year. And I on your profile, I mean, you realised savings bigger than most companies even spend or could imagine spending, and that was the saving. I mean, that's amazing. Um, is it, when you think about it in terms of recruitment, it's just kind of so unrelatable to most people. I mean, how do you even contemplate that? How complex that is, or you know, manage that such a large spend? I mean, it must be just take you forever.
yeah, well, you have a great team. You do have to get used to thinking with more zeros, which was really odd. And I'll have to say that probably took a year or two. Once I landed at BP, as you come out of a company that over $200 billion in revenue on an annualized basis. But the mega side of things, you do have to think globally and locally, right? From cultural nuances, jurisdictional nuances, from our how do we handle contingent labor in different parts of the world, especially maybe some more unique places, Middle East, some that may be a little bit more under pressure, geopolitical pressure. So you have to work through all of those nuances. And I had a philosophy. It was partner, partner, partner. My team got sick of hearing it, I think. We partnered internally with our internal stakeholders. In a large company, kind of in any industry, you're going to have people that are really smart that may not even be in the location, but are really smart about that location. And you do have to come, you and your team and your other external partners, which is the second P. Your external partners, your MSP, your VMS, have to come up to speed on a lot of things there. Cultural fluency is very important. That's what we called it. And then, kind of partner outside of yourself, academically, potentially with other industries. SIA is great for this. Big fan of SIA, Staffing Industry Analyst. Um, when I think I went before I even took the job, I got to go to the first mid-year meeting at SIA, and I learned so much from the other council members in other industries. I remember talking to the gentleman who ran the UPS program at the time, right? UPS, not oil and gas, logistics and delivery and transportation, all that. But again, spoke to the leader from Nike, a whole other market. So those partners also, but besides just learning things, you can apply different things, and it's a little less, competitive, right? Because you're not working or trying to source the same people from the same kind of suppliers that might be out there. But that mega scale, yes, you got to rely on your internal experts, your partners, your external experts, and kind of bring it all together. That's kind of what one of the things that led me to Beeline in the ecosystem strategy role. So I'll pause there, but
No, no, no.
think about it, it's an ecosystem, right? Uh,
Yeah, 100%. Can I ask, I want to talk about that step into
yeah,
technology with Beeline, but I have one question which I think is fascinating, which I hadn't thought about. But
yeah,
you talked about the fact you started regarding robotic, like almost employees, like it
yep,
was doing the work of a human, so you regarded it as such. And for a lot of people, that's if it isn't in their wheelhouse right now, that's coming onto their screens quickly, right? Why did you take that approach? I mean, what led you to that? Rather than it being a product, it was doing work. So just curious about. It seems obvious when you say it, but I wouldn't have thought it myself.
sure, yeah. It was before even. There's a great book out there from John Boudreau, who's world expert in HR and the world of work. The book I think he came out with was Lead the Work, if I remember correctly. And the other author I was Marshall Goldsmith, but the speaker I mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
The Lead the Work kind of thing is thinking about, kind of all of the components, if you will, or all of the participants in output or outcomes, and how are you going to get there? Um, the robotics piece was, I we had a learning center in the building I was in, and they had mock-ups and some demos of different some augmented reality, some different robotic type things, and it was mainly for external visitors and interns, and it was just a big learning center and some kind of exhibits. But it was like, well, that's part of getting the job done. And even going back to my kind of power plant days, you couldn't get if you didn't have the right equipment or material, you couldn't get the job done. And I think it was the blend of kind of intelligence, maybe kind of moving into either software bots or the robotics that, and robotics in a lot of cases do need one of the roles on our continued workforce was submarine driver, or uh, a drone flyer. It was all of so what else do they need? Maybe they come with it, or do we need to provide it, type of thing. So that's where that kind of thinking came from. And the bots, really, I learned about some bots that finance was using that we really needed in procurement. And I'm like, well, how is anybody ever going to, let's list these as worker roles, if you will, in our job catalog, so that we can potentially go and find that next time when somebody needs it. And it was,
I mean, it's hugely fascinating about the idea about how technology and humans are going to kind of work seamlessly or integrate. Um, I saw someone speak recently from Microsoft, and she talked about technology being the enabler of humans, you know, to improve human performance. But I guess there's plenty of people that would argue the other way.
yeah, I like the augmentation, AI, augmented intelligence, as opposed to
Yeah,
art.
yeah. I mean, as I said to you just before we came on the podcast, I just came off a meeting earlier today, and wow, some of it just was amazing. Anyway, tell me about the step into Beeline. So, the mega program at BP is huge, and then you made this move into tech, and on the other side of, or a part of that sort of process of recruitment. Why was that? And what did you learn from that, or what did you bring to that?
Sure. Yeah. The complexity that we need to manage on the continued workforce side. I'm not saying there isn't a lot of complexity on the employee or permanent recruitment side, but there's the payment aspect, which obviously there's payroll, but the payment aspect gets pretty complicated, and all of what flows through a requisition into a posting, into an offer and an order, and out the back end is an invoice to get everybody paid on correctly and on time, is really, really complex. And I love kind of the role I had gotten, which was kind of the dream job title, the dream job with the dream team. Beeline is a market leader and has a lot of deep experts that work there, and obviously a world-class software platform. So it was being able to multiply the effect of a world leader in VMS or extended workforce platforms like Beeline with a small but mighty ecosystem of partners. And that was what my role was to identify product partners that we were going to integrate with. And one of the first ones that came out the gate was an AI partner. And kind of grow it from roughly 4 to 40. And we all also expected that to be hosted up in more of a marketplace that our customers could kind of like your apps marketplace, whether you're in Apple or Android, you go to the App Store and you pull it down. It might not be quite that easy because these are, enterprise applications, but almost that easy to be able to sign up and, add on freelance management systems, add on direct sourcing systems, which are were another thing we were working to expand, and add on credentialing, background checks, all of those things that are in the ecosystem of getting contingent workforce kind of frictionless and moving through much more efficiently. Your enterprise, and small to medium to large enterprise. So that's what attracted me. And again, the idea of kind of gluing together the dream team of partners, if you will, that were out there, not just one partner in one space, but multiple partners that could do, everybody wants choice. So the flavor of assessments, or the flavor of video interviewing, or the flavor of, and be able to do that pretty instantaneously.
And I mean, you've also done advisory work, and clearly with your sort of background, I can completely understand why you're in demand to do that sort of stuff. But how does it, from an advisory perspective, where you're not so hands on? How does that feel? I mean, do you see repetitive gaps in the way people are approaching this, or is it a complete blank page solutions type thing for you?
Yeah, I think you mentioned earlier, kind of evolving through your career. And I remember kind of making that switch into a manager or leader kind of world where you thought you were the only one that could do it right. And then you had to rely on your team. Um, Kind of going from manager to leader, you're letting them not only uh, do the stuff, but figure out how to do the stuff, what to do next, and asking the right questions and guiding it. Then moving into kind of more of the advisory role, from a business perspective is really neat. You get to see more of the all the aspects of the business, and obviously businesses need to grow and make money, and a lot of hard trade-offs, and what's it going to take to kind of get to the next level of investment if you're kind of in the investment route, and what's it going to take to get the next big customer. So it's been another growth step in my career, and it has been eye-opening from the standpoint of you know you want things to go really fast, but not just kind of on your business side, but with your customers, etc. But it takes time, so there's a
Yeah.
lot of patience needed.
Yeah, and in the future work, do with all this experience, from mega programs to technology to advisory, how do you see the world of work shaping up? Because what's interesting, like there's this futuristic AI kind of concept of integration of humans and technology, but on the same time, regulators and governments are struggling to figure out how they're going to tax people because work's changing, remote working, borderless employment, and regulation all coming together. It's like things are moving quicker than people can figure out what to do with. Is that how do you see it shaping up over the next, we're called 2030 for a reason, but how do you
Right.
see it shaping up by 2030?
Yeah, it certainly is accelerating, and that is both exhilarating and scary at the same time. I guess we're, obviously the regulation side needs to keep up. And hopefully, no harm, kind of through good, well measured regulations. But I think, ultimately, if, in the optimistic side of AI and the augmented intelligence, if you will, is we're going to get better at the human side of things. So if you're freed up, uh, one of the AI projects I did was around auto sourcing, auto scoring, and auto ranking. And now that sounds interesting, but there's a lot of bias if humans do it. You try to work the bias out from the way you set up your AI model, and you can continue to test and train that, right? That's the idea. So I think kind of puts in the laboratory a little bit more, hard facts around bias than we do in the individual, when humans solely do it. But hopefully that frees up. Let's just say, for example, when you do get to a short list of candidates, that recruiter can then work on some coaching sessions with the candidate if they truly are like a finalist for the role. I've been out there in the job market, and it isn't human at all. You rarely get any feedback from a you get the acknowledgement you've submitted an application. You rarely, maybe 25% of the time, ever find out that you actually um, you didn't get it or you're not being considered. And then once you do get in the loop, the communications are really bad. So my hope is, even AI communication on a weekly basis, and I have kind of this talent bill of rights in mind, if you will. I don't know. You probably have you heard that before? Talent bill of rights? Or,
I've not heard that before, but I kind
uh,
of well to explain it just to make sure I've got it right.
sure. Um, yeah, it's not huge and not hugely in depth, but one, we go to these job boards, and my understanding is only 1 or 2% of the jobs get filled off of those job boards, which is really low. Maybe that's a wrong number. I've looked and looked kind of for hard numbers. They're really hard to find, so that's somewhat anecdotal. So don't hold me to that, but it's low. And one, you should be able to go to a job board that there's positive intent to hire people from, not just fish for people, not just to test the market, etc. So I think there's this, and you as an individual should be a real worker. So real workers, meaning you have. It'd be nice if people came with their own kind of work verification and or education verification, at least as a bare minimum to that community, if you will, that hiring community. But weekly updates, so it's real work, real workers, weekly updates, even if it's automated. I was tracking one application I put in at a point in time. It was, I think, 96 days before I heard back anything. And that's better than more than half of the applications that I've put in the past. And those are cold applications, etc. But and then I think besides the weekly updates, the Talent Bill of Rights, there should be some kind of this process should take 30 days or 60 days, not infinite days, and you should hear a final outcome. More specific than not just you. It's not you. It's somebody else, or we're not filling the job. With some real feedback. So I don't know. Those are 4 or 5 things in a Talent Bill of Rights. I'm sure other people have thought it through further, but
No, it's 100% accurate. I mean, talking to people over time, I mean, it's not only frustrating; it's just rude that people don't get that level of feedback. And in fact, um, I've also seen the opposite experience with my own kids and their friends. So when they graduate, they spend 3 hours online filling out an application form, writing stories about what they can do, their capability. They hit send and they get rejected within 3 minutes. The opposite happens where the algorithm and the technology just deselects them based on the response. They don't even get a chance to showcase their potential or how excited they are about the opportunity, and yet they put 3 hours into an application that required so much detail,
yeah,
and then they feel dismissed, rejected, and ultimately in the end, your Bill of Rights concept is so important, not just because people should have a much more dignity focused, respect focused process. The people doing it are people that sell goods and services that
yeah,
start alienating customers that, that experience is poor. So, yeah, your Bill of Rights thing, I mean, we should definitely amplify that idea. And I mean, people talk about it, but no one owns it. And everybody, you know, for example, every company doesn't trust information. So someone who, candidates are replicating the effort to be reference checked or background checked 100 times for 100 jobs, whereas actually it's the same information.
yeah.
And so, it should be relatively available. So that's a whole different podcasting. But I 100% agree with you because I've seen it both ways, and technology can do a really good thing here, provided it's set up the right way.
Yeah.
And as you know, I do a lot of work in um, disability inclusion, and so removal of bias and giving people an equitable opportunity for work is that's part of my DNA. I think everyone should get treated fairly. Anyway, sorry, off my soapbox, but just to wind up, I want to ask a question. Ask everybody else: if you weren't doing what you're doing now, what would you be doing?
Well, I did glance at a couple of your other podcasts, and I can check the box on DJ. So
Yeah.
I amateur at best. Yeah, DJ Linky Link is no I'm kidding. It was a kids thing anyway, for my son's parties and camping trips and whatnot. So I aspire to be like Steve, more of a portfolio kind of career, but kind of mixing the consulting and possibly coaching. I had this idea. I had a football coach in high school who was my guidance counselor, and he didn't do much counseling. He just kind of grunted at you and pointed you to the school library with the computer. And yeah, back in those days, go find a college type of thing. And I often thought it would be great to have this um, database or this platform that gave you the good, the bad, and the ugly of different careers. I called it back then. I called it career choice. Thought it would be really useful for high schoolers trying to figure out where they wanted to go, and it would give them a sense for not it was the work style as well as the work. Right? There's a work style, right? I have medical professionals in our family, teachers, professors. Um, there's work styles, right? You may like the work, but you don't like the work style. So I thought that was, in kind of evolving that into today. There's, this some companies give outplacement support, but what if the company doesn't give outplacement support? How do you get into a community of encouragers that help you through your job search? So a platform that kind of brings those two concepts together for low or no cost, nonprofit would be awesome. We've got some few great ideas for that, from repurposing maybe platforms that are out there to kind of serve that up. So that would be a piece of it. And I know that's still kind of work oriented, and then serving kind of, there's a lot of disasters happening, right? There's a lot of things we can do out there. Behind me, there's a little drone setup. So I think there's opportunity for drones to help even more during disasters, assess things, find people, etc. So, just looking to do something with that interest of mine.
Wow. I mean, you're never going to be short of things to do, Link. You got like so many ideas, and that's why it's so interesting to talk to you, and in many ways inspiring. Because your journey's been one of, like, it's almost been a career adventure, right? One thing's led to another, and you've just taken it on, and you've ended up in some amazing places. So look, amazing career, and look, I've really had a great time talking to you, and I'm sure we're going to do this again. There's a lot more story to tell. So I hope I get a chance to do that. But look, thank you so much for giving up some time. It's great to talk to you. We'll talk again soon. And Linc, thanks very much. And tune into the podcast, everyone. There's some really great people to meet, and Linc is just one of them. So thanks again, Linc.
My pleasure.